Good morning, it's me, Miss Dykes from the past, here to talk to you a little bit about what we're starting today. Today we're going to be starting a series of 3 pictures. Today's picture is going to be a landscape. The next time we have art, it's going to be a seascape, like the ocean. And then the next time after that, we're going to be doing a cityscape. So we're gonna look at a famous artist. We're going to talk about how space is a big element of art for when we talk about landscapes and seascapes and cityscapes. And we're gonna learn all about how we're going to create these so they look like they're in believable space. So if you're at home, I'll talk to you about using paper like this in 4 different sections. And if you're in class with me, we're going to be starting it in our sketchbook. This is our artist, David Hockney, and he draws very colorful, very expressive landscapes. They could be cityscapes kind of like this, where there's some natural things going on. There could be landscapes like this. Look at the colors, look at those textures. And he really concentrates on the space. So let's look at this for a second. Space can go in many directions. The up and down arrow shows that the road and the fields go away from us as if they were going off into the distance. Also think about the space in between things, left to right. The trees have small spaces between them. There's a lot of space that the fields take up. Space is distance either away or space that's in between things, or it could be space that something takes up. So we'll talk about size as well. When you're looking at a landscape, you can usually divide it into 3 different parts. Foreground, which is the closest part. See that black tree and the ground that is colored in black? Middle ground, things that are middle far away from us. And background, things that are very far away from us. Now let's look at the placement. Things that are usually in the foreground are really big and they start from the bottom of the paper. Things in the middle are a little bit higher and are behind the foreground. Things in the background are very small usually, and they are the highest up on the paper. So we're going to look at a few examples of landscape to show foreground, middle ground, and background. And you'll see how things get smaller as they go away from us and higher on the page. Now this one kind of shows a 3D model, where the other one was showing us how it would look flat. So this one you can really see that the people are in the front, the foreground, the trees behind them in the middle ground, and the mountains are in the background. When you flatten that out, it looks something more like this. The trees on the bottom are in the foreground. The middle ground are kind of the fields and everything in between. See how it's higher on the paper than the foreground? And the mountains are the background, the highest thing near the top of the paper. All right, so you know foreground, middle ground, and background. You also might know what's in red. That is called the horizon line. The horizon line is where the sky meets the earth. All right, so today what we're going to be doing is starting 3 projects, and so we're going to write some notes on it in our sketchbook. I will also always do an example for friends at home, for our virtual students. So if you are a virtual student, pause. I want you to fold a paper into 4. You're going to write the notes here, and then today's drawing will be here. Then next week will be here, and the next week will be here. So that way it kind of matches the size and format of our friends using sketchbooks. So what we're going to do is first write some notes about different kinds of scapes. So we're going to be today doing a landscape, next time doing a seascape, and the next time doing a cityscape. So if you wrote on this page already, it's okay. Go ahead and just kind of write underneath of it. But you're going to first divide your paper in half with a line. Once you do that, we're gonna write land, sea, and city. And we're going to do that like a list on this side of the paper. Land, L-A-N-D, sea, S-E-A, like the ocean, and city. After you do that, right next to them, I like to put like a little arrow, and then I'm gonna write the word scapes. It's not really a word we use, but it's going to be the end of all of these other words. So for example, landscapes are what we're doing today. Seascapes is what we'll be doing next time. And cityscapes is what we'll be doing last. Take your time to write that on the top of your paper. If you are done early and you're waiting for other friends to finish writing, you can decorate around these words if you'd like to. It's always a great time if you have extra time to decorate the edges of your page. Or work on the front of your sketchbook if you have extra time. All right, if you're still writing, that's okay. Just pay attention to what we're writing next and then join us when you're ready. The next thing we're gonna do at the bottom is write notes about foreground, middle ground, and background. So what I want you to do is that you're going to make 3 lines dividing this part of the paper. I'm gonna do it in pencil. So if you want to, you can kind of mark off 1, 2, 3, just to make sure you have enough space. But go ahead and draw a line across the bottom, a line above it, and a line above that. So 3 lines, you should have 4 spaces. If you ran out of space, just draw a line in between. So this will be our reference when we are doing, when we're looking at how we should draw things. So on the bottom, in this bottom space, this is our foreground. This is the biggest space. So from the bottom of your paper to the line, I want you to write FG, really big. But make sure it's in that line still. FG for foreground. After you're done with that, the one above it, which is a little farther away, is middle ground. Middle ground is going to be a little bit smaller. So about half that size, not too tiny. I want you to write MG for middle ground. So smaller than FG, but not too tiny. And then if you guessed it, the last one above that is background, where you will write very tiny BG for background. So foreground's the biggest and lowest on the paper, middle ground's the middle and middle sized, background's the highest and smallest sized. And then, does anyone remember what this line is called? That's right, this is the horizon line. So we're gonna put an arrow pointing to that line, and I'm gonna put HL for horizon line. You could even color that line a different color. You could put some clouds in the sky, so you remember that above the horizon line is the sky. And once again, if you are at home, friends, you're just working in this space. If you are at home, friends, you're just working in this space. Okay, take a second to finish writing the notes. It's okay if you didn't decorate. That's something you could also do later if you have more time. The important thing is that you have the 3 kinds of scapes and the foreground, middle ground, and background diagram. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to draw a landscape with a building in it. And our challenge is to only use primary colors. So you'll draw along with me. But after we're done drawing the landscape together, you can only use red, yellow, and blue to color it how you'd like. All right, so my at-home virtual friends, you'll be drawing in this space. My friends at school, we're going to be using the back side of our first piece of paper. This paper is thick enough for us to be using the backs and the fronts. So the first thing we're going to draw is the foreground. And we're going to draw a very tall tree. Think about it, if you were standing next to a tree, it would be way taller than you. It would, if you're looking straight on, you couldn't see the top unless you looked up. So on the left side of your paper, starting near the bottom because it's foreground, we're going to draw a tree trunk to about here. Draw one side of your tree trunk. And then draw the other side. Remember, it's okay if your tree doesn't look like mine, but we want it to start very close to the bottom here and go about 2/3 up the page. After that, let's go ahead and put a V at the top of our tree for the branches going off to the sides. So it looks like a Y. And then you're going to put the leaves. Now, we're not gonna draw every single leaf because we're not close enough to the tree. So you can use a kind of bumpy line. And look how it goes off the top of the page and off the page this way. We can't see the whole tree. I mean, if you wanna pretend, don't do this, but you have some of it off the page. Once again, don't do what I just did on the table. But you're gonna have your tree going off the page. Once you're done with your tree, we're gonna draw a line behind it, not too far up. So find your tree bottom, go a little bit up. You're gonna do a line that goes off to the left and touches the side. Then you're going to do another line that goes all the way to the middle of your sketchbook. This is our foreground. It starts at the bottom of the paper. And even though our tree takes up the whole paper, its roots or its base starts at the bottom. The next ground we're gonna do is middle ground. So let's just check back at our first page just to make sure we're on the right track. So foreground starts at the bottom, middle ground will be in the middle. Things will seem a little smaller. So in real life, a house would probably be about as tall as a tree. But because it's in our middle ground, we're gonna draw it a little bit smaller. So Above your foreground line, I want you to draw a square that doesn't touch the top of the tree, but floats above your foreground line. See how it's almost half the size of the tree trunk there? And let's just draw a simple triangle on top. You can decorate your house a little more after, but for right now, for placement, we're going to only do the top. Just like the foreground, we need a line. So, find your house. One side, go all the way to the middle, which isn't that far. And then we need the other side. Now this is important. Your line goes behind your house, not through it. It should also go behind the tree. So when you reach the tree, stop, go to the other side, and continue. There's our middle ground. The last ground we're going to do is our background. Very classically, we're going to put some mountains in. So for your mountains, it's just going to be a line, but mountains aren't straight. So you're going to do a kind of bumpy zigzag line that starts above your house. But when it meets the tree, do the same thing where you stop at the tree and then you continue on the other side. This mountain line, remember, also is our horizon line. So all this space up here, that's sky. All right. Now we're going to color. Do you remember your challenge? We're only using primary colors. So you need a yellow, you need a blue, and you need a red. I'm gonna pull out 2 different kinds of blues just because I want to. And this will challenge us to make our landscape kind of look odd or weirdly colorful, kind of like David Hockney's landscapes. It is up to you to decide how you want to color it. So, do I want a red tree with yellow leaves that have blue polka dots? Do I want a light blue house by pushing not so hard? Instead of my sky being blue, do I want it to be red? It's time for you to make those decisions. Your only rule is that you can only use red, yellow, and blue. I'm gonna speed up mine so you can see how I color. But I want you to choose how you use red, yellow, and blue, and maybe add some textures to it too. Alright, so there is our primary colored landscape with foreground, middle ground, and background. If you are at home, you did it in one of our other spaces, please make sure that you keep your paper because we're going to be doing a seascape and a cityscape next. At school, we're going to do a seascape here and a cityscape next over here. Alright, so if you are at home, remember to take a picture of this one and submit it for this week, and then keep this paper so you can use the other 2 sections for the next weeks after this. If you're at school, you do not have to submit, but you can if you want to. It will be on your to-do list, but if I've seen you in class, I have marked you off already in my paper grade book, so don't worry if it's still there and you see me in person. And until next week, have fun creating.